Sue Gray's report into lockdown rule-breaking in Downing Street is set to be released. It's thought it could be out as soon as tomorrow, and it could even include some photographic evidence.
But with concerns over the cost of living gripping millions across the country, is this distracting the government from doing important work? Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Simon Clarke, joins us now. Very good morning to you, Mr. Clarke.
Morning.
Are you worried if Sue Gray releases photographs?
I'm very pleased that the Sue Gray report is shortly to be released. I think it's important that we bring closure to the events of recent weeks and that the public get to hear her views, and I think it will be warmly welcomed by everyone when it is published. I don't know about the technical questions about what is or is not going to be included. Clearly that's a matter which needs consultation with, I imagine, the police, with the civil service, in terms of if more junior civil servants are in any way to be named, for example. And it's these practical issues which, as I understand it, are now the last remaining things which need to be
You're very polite and respectful of Sue Gray, but some of your colleagues on the backbenches, I believe, aren't. They're briefing newspapers this morning, saying that they think that Sue Gray is playing politics. They say that she is enjoying her spell in the limelight far too much. Basically, they're assassinating her character. They're getting their retaliation in a day early. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that's quite wrong. No one ought to question the integrity of Sue Gray. She is one of the most well-known and well-respected civil servants in government, and her integrity and independence, I think, is absolutely beyond question. And it is, I think, very important for people's confidence in our wider political system that her report is allowed to be brought forward and heard respectfully, because ultimately we've been waiting a long time for this. Obviously, we've had the intervening police investigation, but we are now in a position where she can publish her findings, and I really genuinely welcome that, because we need to have that disclosure, and we need to bring that closure as well to what has been a very difficult and damaging episode.
You personally haven't been fined. Presumably you knew these parties were going on. There were so many of them. Did you know they were going on and simply decide not to go? Keep your nose clean, basically?
Richard, I was on the backbenches over much of the period in question. I had absolutely no awareness of any of these events, and therefore this isn't really a question I can answer. I genuinely was, and seriously, was entirely unaware.
So in that case, you must have been as shocked as everybody else when it came out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's vitally important that the rules are upheld, and there is no question that that's something which the Prime Minister has taken full responsibility for. He's apologised repeatedly and sincerely for what happened, and I know that he is keen that we end this whole episode and that we allow Sue Gray to report so that he can respond in the House of Commons as he committed to, and we can all move forward with what are obviously immensely serious challenges at home and abroad at the moment.
Whatever the report contains tomorrow, do you feel that Mr Johnson's position is now secure? Do you feel that the public wrath, which at first was incandescent, has abated enough for him to carry on, whatever the report says?
I have full confidence in the Prime Minister. I obviously serve as a member of his government, and I know him well, and I believe that he has shown extraordinary leadership during an extraordinary time. We've obviously gone through a series of crises over recent years, the like of which no Prime Minister has faced in peacetime. We've had the issue of delivering Brexit, which I think the Prime Minister alone could have resolved and honoured what people voted for. We've had the extraordinary challenge of the pandemic, and now we've had war in the Ukraine.
Yeah, we've also got a Prime Minister who was fined because he broke the law at a time when everyone had been told by the Prime Minister to stick to the law. I mean, how can you have full confidence in a Prime Minister who does that?
As I say, I do have confidence because the Prime Minister has apologised and I know very sincerely regrets what happened. It is important to contextualise. He had a fine for a slice of cake between meetings, which I think in the context of the extraordinary
everybody who's broken the law has got a justification for why they broke the law. The fact remains, he broke the law. And these were laws that he stood at press conferences and told us we couldn't even bend the rules, let alone break them. It just seems surprising that somebody who did that himself and oversaw a government where civil servants and other members of the government were also fined for breaking those laws should have the full confidence of anybody, frankly.
Because he has responded to those findings with, I believe, a sincere apology and, crucially, a series of reforms in Downing Street to make sure that building operates with the highest levels of professionalism as the public would expect. The context is important to what occurred and the extraordinary pressures that were being applied to the occupants of that building, who were working on questions of literally life and death under truly exhausting
not like doctors and nurses
strain.
who were actually dealing with life and death,
Well,
or like people who had to obey the rules when they could or couldn't go to funerals where people had actually died. I mean, I know the government wants to move on, and you say that the Prime Minister who broke the law has your full confidence. I just think there will be a lot of people watching who suffered during that period of time because they couldn't be together, who may not share that full confidence.
Well, people suffered dreadfully during the pandemic, Susanna, and that is absolutely the case. And it is precisely because of that the Prime Minister has apologised very sincerely for what occurred. Right. He obviously also suffered loss during that time, and his mother died, and of course he himself nearly died from this disease. So there can be no question that he has been through the ringer himself. He understands the magnitude of these events, and he has apologised.
Well, we talk about moving on. Let's move on to fuel poverty. We've got the head of E.ON, the power company, yesterday saying very succinctly that it's time for the government to do something to help people. He says 40% of households are going to be in fuel poverty in just a few weeks. It's a major problem that he personally, as head of that company, is very concerned about. I'm part of the tranche of commentators, if you like, who've been predicting for a month now that your government, despite everything that they've said, is going to impose a windfall tax. Front page of the Times today says that's exactly what's going to happen. Is it, and do you support it?
Well, this is a really important question for us to resolve. And the honest answer is, philosophically, I am not attracted to the idea of imposing more taxes if they deter crucially needed investment in the next generation of North Sea oil and gas extraction.
But hold on, BP has said that it won't deter them. The chairman of British Petroleum has said again and again and again that he will spend every penny that the company is committed to spending on research and development, as well as being able to afford a windfall tax. He couldn't have given you a greener light.
Well, with respect, that's not what the majority of the sector have been saying in the conversations that we have had with them. And obviously I was present at a meeting at Number 10 shortly after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where we discussed this with a range of players in the market who are of all sizes and all specialisms. And the very clear message that has been consistently conveyed to the oil and gas sector is that they need to step up to the plate. If they are making extraordinary profits, then they need to be putting that back into jobs and investment in the North Sea to get us the oil and gas that we need for security of supply. How does that help people pay their fuel bills now? I mean, the warning from E.ON is that fuel poverty is predicted to hit 40% of households. 40%, almost half of households in fuel poverty. Well, we've put in place, Susanna, a package of measures worth £22 billion already this year, including a £9 billion package on energy, specifically to help tackle these problems. We recognise that this problem is not going away and that we will always stand ready to do more as the circumstances require. But we have to make sure that when we act in the most sensible, effective and targeted way.
Well, irrespective of what you say on that, straight yes or no, are we going to get a windfall tax in a few days from now?
Well, Richard, with respect, that's not a yes or no question. We obviously continue to look at this question very closely. We will take the action that is required. We've shown, I think, consistently throughout the last 2 years, in the face of really extraordinary events, that the government will help people as the situation warrants. You can rest assured we are absolutely committed to doing that in the same spirit.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you say that, because one of the things, of course, that you did was you had a universal credit uplift, £20 a week, to help people through a really difficult time, and that was the pandemic. You then took that away because that was apparently no longer needed. You could put that back in as households face fuel poverty and food inflation. Is that something you're considering?
Well, on universal credit, in December, we made one of the biggest adjustments to the system since its beginning, in the form of the very major change to what's called the taper rate, the rate at which benefits are withdrawn as people's income rises. So that that was cut from 63p in the pound to 55p in the pound. That is a tax cut worth an average of £1,000 for 2 million
but since then,
people.
inflation has gone up, Mr Clarke. I mean, people are facing
but the principle, Susanna, is allowing people to keep more of what they earn. And it's a very important principle for us to stand behind. We obviously look at all the options open to us. As I say, we are acutely aware of the challenges facing household finances this year, but we do need to make sure that when we act in the most targeted and effective way.
So when will you announce some decisions then? Because every morning on this programme for the last month, we've been putting these questions to people like you, the Minister of the Day, discussing the various options, talking about VAT, talking about the uplift. We talk and talk and talk and talk. And all we ever get, and we've got it again from you this morning, is we're doing our best, we're looking at various options, we'll come to a decision. When? When are you going to announce some direct action to help people who can't afford to pay the electricity bill and who are down to one meal a day and who are travelling on buses to keep warm? I mean, all of that's real. It's happening out there. When is the government going to announce a raft of actual measures as opposed to constantly telling us that you're talking about it? When are you going to do something?
We have announced a package of measures. As I say, we put in place action already this year worth 22
No, but you're talking... No, hang on. No, we know that. We understand that.
Richard, you're suggesting that we are standing idly by.
We understand that you have already done
not.
Certain things, and you've repeated them here, but in these interviews, you're telling us that you're considering future measures. That's what I'm focusing on. When are we going to hear what those future measures are going to be?
We are working very carefully to monitor this situation, and we'll bring forward action at the right time, in the right way, to ensure that, crucially, it helps the people who need it most, it doesn't fuel inflation, and it doesn't worsen the pressures on the national finances. We spent £400 billion responding to COVID. We will spend £83 billion this financial year alone on our debt interest. We have to get these interventions right to protect the wider public.
So when are you going to get them right? Well, of course you have to get them right. When?
Well, Richard, we are working at pace to work out the best package of solutions. The Chancellor will be clear when the time is right for us to act.
Do you think that'll be this month? Next month?
Richard, I'm not going to be drawn on that question. It will be when the time is right.
Well, I wish you would be drawn on the question, because it's what people out there are asking. They want to know when this help's going to arrive, because they're desperate.
The help will arrive to make sure that people have the support they need ahead of the autumn and the winter ahead, when we recognise that things will be extremely challenging. OK, well, we'll keep banging on this drum till we get some kind of deadline. Thank you very much, Minister, anyway, for your time.